The rain had stopped by the time we arrived at the funeral home, but the pavement still smelled like wet asphalt and cold earth. I remember the fluorescent lights in the corridor, how they hummed just above the range of comfortable hearing. My wife Sarah stood beside me adjusting her coat, and through the open door of the viewing room, I could see my brother David lying in the casket, his hands folded across his chest in a way he never would have positioned them in life. Sarah leaned close, her breath warm against my ear, and whispered 6 words that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my marriage. "Let's leave early. This is depressing." My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I simply looked at her, then at David, then back at the hallway stretching behind us toward the exit. I didn't respond. Not then. But something inside me went perfectly still, like the moment before ice cracks. She had no idea what she'd set in motion. My name is Michael Hayes. I'm 52 years old, and for the past 19 years, I'd worked in municipal water infrastructure compliance. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was stable, predictable, and it paid well enough that Sarah never had to work after our daughter Emma was born. We'd been married for 23 years. From the outside, we looked fine. Dinner parties twice a month, annual vacation to the same lake house, Christmas cards with professional photos. But if you watched closely, you'd see the pattern. The way Sarah would start talking before I finished my sentences, how she'd make financial decisions and inform me afterward, never consult me during. The morning she bought a new SUV, and I found out when she asked me to move my car so she could park it in the garage. I remember standing there with my coffee, looking at the gleaming black vehicle, and she'd said, "Don't you love it? I got an amazing deal." She never asked if we could afford it, never asked if I had input on what we needed. She just decided, and I was supposed to nod and smile. I let it go. I let a lot go. David was my younger brother by 4 years. We'd grown up in the same small house in Ohio, shared a bedroom until I left for college, fought over the remote control and the last slice of pizza like all brothers do. But we weren't close as adults. Distance mostly. He'd moved to Arizona for work. I'd stayed in Michigan. We talked maybe 3 times a year, exchanged texts on birthdays. When his wife Rachel called to tell me he died, a sudden heart attack at 48, I felt the news like a stone dropping into deep water. He shouldn't have been gone. Not yet. Not like that. The funeral was scheduled for a Saturday. Sarah had sighed when I told her, already scrolling through her phone. "Do we have to go?" she'd asked. "It's not like you two were that close." I'd felt something tighten in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "He's my brother." She'd shrugged. "Fine, but I'm not staying all day." I didn't argue. I rarely did. We drove the 6 hours to Cincinnati in near silence. Sarah slept most of the way, her neck bent at an angle that would make her complain about it later. I listened to talk radio, letting the voices fill the space. When we arrived at the funeral home, Rachel met us at the entrance. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. She hugged me tight, and I could feel her trembling. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "It means everything." Sarah stood 3 feet away, checking her phone. I introduced them. Sarah offered a quick, "I'm so sorry for your loss," without looking up. Rachel's smile faltered, but she recovered, gracious even in grief. We moved into the viewing room. David looked strange in the casket, too formal, too still. I stood there staring at him, trying to remember the last thing we talked about. A text about a football game, maybe. Something meaningless. Something I'd give anything to have back. Sarah touched my elbow. "How long do we have to stand here?" she murmured. "People are starting to arrive." I watched her glance toward the door, calculating exit routes. That's when she leaned in close and said it. "Let's leave early. This is depressing." I turned to look at her. Really look at her. Her makeup was perfect. Her expression was impatient. She wasn't grieving. She wasn't even pretending to grieve. She was inconvenienced. I opened my mouth to respond, but Rachel appeared beside us, her hand on my arm. "Michael, can I talk to you for a second?" Her voice was shaking. I followed her into a small office off the main hallway. She closed the door and turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. "I need to tell you something," she said. "David recorded a message for you a few months ago." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She pulled out her phone, her hands trembling as she scrolled. "He had a health scare in March, chest pain. They ran tests, said his heart was fine, but it scared him. He started recording messages for people he loved, just in case. He never thought—" Her voice broke. She handed me the phone. "He wanted you to have this. I was going to wait, but after hearing what your wife just said, I think you need to see it now." I took the phone. The screen showed a video file dated April 14th. I pressed play. David's face filled the screen, sitting in what looked like his home office, sunlight coming through the window behind him. He looked tired, but calm. "Hey, Mike," he said, and hearing his voice made my throat feel raw. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry we didn't stay closer. I'm sorry I didn't call more. But I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me." He leaned forward, his eyes locked on the camera. "I know about Sarah. I've known for years. The way she talks to you, the way she dismisses you, the way she treats you like you're scenery in your own life. I've wanted to say something 100 times, but it wasn't my place. But now, if I'm gone, it is my place. You deserve better, Mike. You've always deserved better. You're a good man. You're kind and steady and reliable. And those aren't weaknesses, they're strengths. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, especially not someone who should be building you up instead of tearing you down." He paused, rubbed his face. "I don't know if you'll ever leave. I don't know if you'll ever stand up. But I hope you do. Because the brother I grew up with, the one who taught me how to throw a baseball and stood up to Dad when he was drinking, that brother wouldn't let anyone treat him like this. I miss that guy. I hope you find him again." The video ended. I stood there holding Rachel's phone, staring at the black screen. My hands were steady, my breathing was controlled, but something inside me had shifted, like tectonic plates moving beneath the surface. Rachel was crying quietly. "He loved you so much," she said. "He just wanted you to be happy." I handed her the phone back. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. "Can I ask you something? Did he ever tell you exactly what Sarah said or did?" Rachel nodded. "Last Thanksgiving, you guys visited for a few hours. Sarah complained the entire time about the drive, about the food, about the neighborhood. When you went to the bathroom, she told David and me that she couldn't understand why you insisted on maintaining a relationship with family you barely saw. She said it was a waste of time and gas money." I felt my jaw tighten. I didn't remember that. Or maybe I did, and I'd filed it away with all the other small cuts. "What did David say?" Rachel smiled through her tears. "He told her that family isn't measured by frequency of contact. It's measured by who shows up when it matters. Then he asked her when was the last time she'd shown up for you." I walked back into the viewing room. Sarah was standing by the guest book, texting. I moved to David's casket and stood there, looking at my brother's face. I stayed there for 2 hours. I greeted every person who came to pay respects. I hugged Rachel's children. I stood with David's friends from work and listened to their stories about him, learning things about my brother I'd never known. Sarah came over twice to ask when we were leaving. Both times I said, "Soon," and returned to my conversations. At one point she hissed, "This is ridiculous, we've been here forever." I looked at her. "Go wait in the car if you want." She blinked, startled. I'd never spoken to her like that before. She didn't go to the car. She stood against the far wall, radiating irritation. I didn't care. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not angry, not hurt, just quiet, focused, clear. We stayed for the entire funeral service the next day. We went to the burial. We attended the reception at Rachel's house. Sarah sat in the corner the whole time, scrolling through social media, making no effort to speak to anyone. I helped Rachel organize food. I talked with David's colleagues. I held Rachel's youngest daughter when she started crying because she missed her dad. Every time I glanced at Sarah, she looked more annoyed. On the drive home, she finally exploded. "That was the most exhausting weekend of my life," she said. "I can't believe you made me stay that long. It's not like he was even your real brother." I kept my eyes on the road. "What does that mean?" She waved her hand dismissively. "You know what I mean. You barely talk to him. You saw him, what, once a year? It's performative, Michael. All of it." I didn't respond. I drove the rest of the 6 hours in silence. When we got home, I carried the bags inside, and Sarah immediately went upstairs to take a bath. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. Monday morning, I took a personal day. I didn't tell Sarah. I let her assume I'd gone to work as usual. Instead, I drove to a law office in the next town over, a family attorney named Patricia Cole that a colleague had recommended years ago during his divorce. I sat in her office and laid out 19 years of marriage, the dismissiveness, the financial control, the emotional erosion. I showed her text messages Sarah had sent me over the past year. Things like, "Don't bother coming to Emma's recital if you're going to be late again," when I'd never been late to a single event. "I already decided on the contractor, just sign the check," when I'd asked to review bids for a kitchen remodel. "You're embarrassing me," sent from a party we'd attended together when I'd told a story she thought was boring. Patricia read them without expression. When she finished, she looked up at me. "What are you hoping to accomplish?" I thought about David's video, about his words, about the brother he remembered. "I want clarity," I said. "I want to know exactly where I stand financially, legally, emotionally. And then I want to decide if I stay or if I go." Patricia nodded. "That's the sanest thing I've heard in this office in months. Let's get started." Over the next 3 weeks, I moved like a man working through a checklist. Patricia requested financial records, tax returns, account statements. I discovered Sarah had opened a credit card in my name without telling me, running up $12,000 in charges. I discovered she'd taken out a loan against our house to pay for the SUV, forging my signature on the paperwork. I discovered she'd been transferring money from our joint account into a separate account in her name only. $200 every week for the past 3 years. $31,000 gone. When I asked my bank to pull the records, the manager looked at me with something like pity. "You didn't know?" she asked. I shook my head. She printed everything, highlighted the relevant lines. I sat in my car afterwards staring at the pages. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Can you pick up dinner on the way home? I don't feel like cooking." I didn't respond. I went home and acted normal. I picked up dinner. We ate in front of the television. I asked about her day. She complained about traffic. It was the same routine we'd performed for years. But I wasn't performing anymore. I was observing, taking notes, preparing. I installed a camera in the kitchen, hidden inside a clock radio I'd bought. I wanted to see if anything happened when I wasn't home. For 2 days, nothing. Then on Thursday afternoon, the camera caught Sarah on the phone with someone. I know, she was saying, "but I can't leave yet. I need to make sure the house is in my name first. Michael's too stupid to even check the accounts. I've been skimming for years." She laughed, actually laughed. "Once Emma's out of the house, I'm done. 2 more years, max. Then I'm free and set." I watched the footage 3 times. My heart didn't race. It stopped. Then it started again, steady and cold. I sent the video to Patricia. She called me within an hour. "This changes things," she said. "We can move on fraud. We can freeze accounts. We can protect you." I thought about it. "Not yet," I said. "I want everything documented first. I don't want her to see it coming." Patricia paused. "You're sure?" I was sure. Silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Sarah escalated without realizing she was escalating. She started making bigger purchases. A weekend spa trip with friends, $4,000 charged to our joint credit card. A designer purse, $1,800. When I saw the statements, I didn't say anything. I just forwarded them to Patricia. Sarah started criticizing me more openly. At a dinner party with friends, she told a story about how I'd forgotten to pick up her dry cleaning, making me sound incompetent and forgetful. The story was fiction. I'd never been asked to pick up dry cleaning, but I smiled and let her talk. One of our friends, a man named Greg, pulled me aside later. "You okay, man?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine." He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. I appreciated that. The next week, Sarah announced she was going to visit her sister in Florida for a long weekend. "You'll be fine on your own, right?" she asked. "Just don't burn the house down." I told her to have a good trip. The morning she left, I called Patricia. "She's gone for 4 days. Can we move now?" Patricia's voice was calm. "Yes, I'll file tomorrow." The paperwork was served to Sarah on Tuesday morning when she returned home. I was already at work when it happened, but my attorney's paralegal confirmed the sheriff had delivered the divorce petition and restraining order on financial accounts at 9:15 a.m. My phone started ringing at 9:17. I didn't answer. Sarah called 6 times in a row. Then she started texting. "What the hell is this? Are you seriously doing this? You can't freeze my accounts. Call me right now." I screenshotted every message and sent them to Patricia. At noon, Sarah called from a different number. I answered. "Michael, what is happening?" Her voice was shaking, but it wasn't sadness, it was rage. "I think the paperwork is pretty clear," I said. My voice was calm, measured. "This is insane. Over what? Because I wanted to leave your brother's depressing funeral early?" I felt something cold settle in my chest. "No," I said, "because you stole from me, because you forged my signature, because you've been planning your exit for years while pretending we were building a life together." Silence. Then, "I don't know what you're talking about." I could hear the calculation in her voice. "I have the bank records, Sarah. I have the loan documents. I have the video of you on the phone talking about skimming money. I have everything." Her breathing changed. "You recorded me? That's illegal." I almost laughed. "Actually, in Michigan, one-party consent makes it perfectly legal. But thank you for confirming what was said." She tried bargaining next. Called me from her mother's phone that evening. "Michael, please, can we just talk about this like adults? I made some mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work it out." I was standing in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd watched her laugh about stealing from me. "No," I said simply. "But I didn't cheat on you," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't do anything that bad." I closed my eyes. "You stole $31,000. You committed fraud. You told our friends I was incompetent. You mocked my grief at my brother's funeral. You called David not my real brother because it made your impatience more justifiable. Which part of that isn't that bad?" She was crying now. Real tears, maybe, or performed ones. I couldn't tell anymore. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I'll pay it all back. I'll fix everything. Just please don't do this." I thought about David's video, about his words, about the brother he'd known. "You chose who mattered," I said quietly, "when you whispered, 'Let's leave early,' while standing 3 feet from my brother's casket. Everything else just confirmed it." I hung up. The divorce took 11 months to finalize. Sarah fought every step, hired an expensive attorney, tried to claim I'd been financially abusive by controlling the accounts she'd been secretly draining. The judge didn't buy it. Patricia presented the evidence methodically. The forged signatures, the secret accounts, the hidden loan, the recorded confession. In the end, Sarah was ordered to repay the stolen funds, received a minimal settlement, and got no alimony. The house stayed mine. Emma, who was 20 by then and in college, called me after the final hearing. "Dad, I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know Mom was doing all that." I believed her. Sarah had been careful to hide it from everyone, including our daughter. "It's not your fault," I told her, "and it doesn't change anything between us. You're my daughter. That's permanent." She cried. We talked for an hour. She told me she'd noticed things over the years, the way Sarah spoke to me, but she'd thought it was just how marriages worked. "It's not," I said gently. "It's not supposed to be like that." 6 weeks after the divorce was final, I changed the locks on the house. It was a Saturday morning. The locksmith was efficient, professional. When he finished, he handed me 3 new keys on a simple ring. "All set," he said. "Nobody's getting in unless you let them." I thanked him, closed the door, and stood in the hallway. The house was quiet, not empty, just quiet. I made coffee, sat on the back porch, and watched the sun climb over the trees in the yard. The air was cool, September, the same month David had died, 1 year earlier. I thought about his video, about his hope that I'd find the brother he remembered. I thought about the 19 years I'd spent making myself smaller to keep the peace. I thought about Sarah's face when she'd whispered those 6 words at the funeral, so casual, so certain I'd agree. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt unburdened, like I'd been carrying weight I didn't even know was there until I set it down. Rachel called me that afternoon. We'd stayed in touch, texting every few weeks, sharing memories of David. "How are you doing?" she asked. I looked around my quiet house. "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. She told me David would be proud. I wasn't sure about that, but I hoped she was right. Before we hung up, she said something that stayed with me. "You know what David told me once? He said you were the strongest person he knew because you stayed kind even when you had every reason not to be. Don't lose that, Michael, even now." I promised I wouldn't. After the call, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out a notebook. I started writing a letter I'd never send, to David, telling him everything that had happened, thanking him for the message, telling him I'd found the brother he remembered, or at least I was trying to. The words came easier than I expected. When I finished, I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday Emma would read it. Maybe not. It didn't matter. Writing it was enough. If you'd been standing at that funeral, hearing what I heard, would you have left immediately or would you have stayed? Would you have confronted it right then, or would you have gathered your evidence first? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Your presence means more than you know. If stories like this matter to you, if they help you see your own life more clearly or feel less alone in the complexity of it, subscribe. Let's keep walking this road together. Not because the road is easy, but because none of us should have to walk it alone.